again, it gets under my skin that someone such as you, who is following the rules in terms of the bail conditions, is getting penalized because you had your vote stripped from you on election day.
Unfortunate. I don't look at this as, poor me. It's all of us. This could have been anybody. And it just sucks that they didn't take into account that.
Well, folks, going back a few months ago when the trucker freedom convoys and their allies went into Ottawa and Windsor, what was the response of the Justin Trudeau federal Liberal government? Well, first of all, the truckers and their allies were demonized and vilified. Then you had people arrested essentially for bylaw infractions. Then, as we reported recently, Rob Stocky, an Ontario police officer, retired, found out that he had his phone wiretapped, ostensibly because he took part in a freedom rally. And now, will you hear the story of my guest who joins me now from Windsor? That would be Andrew Masonville. He apparently had his right to vote taken away. It is unbelievable. First of all, Andrew, thank you so much for joining me here today. As I mentioned, you are in Windsor. You were arrested because you took part in the Freedom Convoy there. Because that's before the courts, your lawyer doesn't want us to get into all that nitty-gritty of your involvement in the convoy. However, the problem you encountered on Election Day stems from your conditions that you have to abide by. First of all, can you tell us what some of your conditions were?
Okay, so I'm not allowed within 500 meters of either border, the tunnel or the bridge. So they're treating us like, we're a threat to the borders. And the other restriction is within my own backyard, feet away from my door. They created this big square that includes the border at the bridge that we're not allowed into. So anybody that was arrested in this on February 13th is not allowed in that area. So,
and you told me off camera, Andrew, that you're allowed to go east, south, north, but you cannot go west. And I presume you cannot go west because that brings you closer to the international border. Is that correct?
The international border is feet away or meters away from my doorstep. So it's my backyard. And yes, I have to go a certain amount of distance to make sure that I'm out of that square.
And naturally, you are respecting the conditions of your release. And I guess, well, one direction's taken away from you, but you got three other directions in which to walk or drive. But things became problematic on June 2nd, last week, Election Day, because you wanted to cast your ballot. And what happened, my friend?
Okay, so listen, we have the right to vote, but not just the right to vote how we want to vote. So I will always be the type to vote in person. So for those that want to say that I've had ample time to do the when you vote ahead and all that, I'm against that. That's not something I want to do. So, my right to vote how I want to vote matters. So when I went to go and vote at Assumption High School, which was our polling station, that we got, we get the little these cards here, and it's got your address and location of where you're supposed to go. They will not let you vote anywhere else but that location. They have managed in my 37 years in my city that we have never had a polling station where it was placed at. And now it was placed within that restricted zone that none of the people that were arrested are allowed in, that all of the people that were arrested are not allowed in.
So in other words, Andrew, where you would have to go to physically vote, if you had gone there, that would put you in violation of your conditions.
In violation of my conditions. I would have been taking a risk being arrested.
And Andrew, I don't know if you reached out to anyone, could there not have been some kind of, I guess, forgiveness, an exemption, so that on Election Day you could go and vote, cast your ballot, like you wanted to and like you always have?
So I went to two different polling stations, apart from the one that I was poll number 12. I went to poll number 11, poll number 13. I was denied at both, but at 13, I was given a phone number. So that was Julius, sorry, I have my autistic child with me. Just be quiet for a sec, bud.
No worries.
I was given a phone number to the return officer, the one handling the counting of the ballots. She told me flat out that you have to have your address has to fall within the poll stations. They have a list of address, so that they're saying that it's to prevent people from being able to go from poll to poll and put in votes. Okay, so I know that there's a service available for at your home voting. And when I asked about this service, she clearly stated to me that it was only for disabled people and other special situations. She didn't even consider that my situation was special.
You know, Andrew, this is unnerving because what about this whole idea that we're always being preached about, which is reasonable accommodation? I mean, as you mentioned, there's this at-home voting service. You are not disabled, of course, but in a way you are disabled. You're disabled from moving towards the proper polling station that would have put you in violation of the law. Why couldn't they, on this case, accommodate you so that you could cast your ballot and stay within your bail conditions?
She wouldn't even acknowledge it. So to be honest with you, I couldn't give you an in-depth answer on that. It seems that when they placed this polling station in that zone, they didn't take an account of that, or they did. We don't know. You know, there's no way to prove that. So the issue is no one was taking accountability. They wouldn't say to me that they were denying my vote. On the other hand, they could not accommodate me.
You know, Andrew, I'll tell you what boils my blood. I mean, it will be seen in the weeks or months ahead how your case turns out with the authorities, given your participation with the bridge blockade. But in Canada, in the here and now, prisoners, the worst of the worst, I'm talking rapists, serial killers, murderers, they have the right to vote in a penitentiary. We accommodate them to cast a ballot, but you haven't been found guilty of anything, and you might not ever be found guilty of the charges. Again, it gets under my skin that someone such as you, who is following the rules in terms of the bail conditions, is getting penalized because you had your vote stripped from you on election day.
Yes, it's quite unfortunate. You know, I don't look at this as, you know, poor me. It's all of us. This could have been anybody. And it just sucks that they didn't take into account that. And as far as the prisoners being able to vote, I mean, I was not aware of that. So that's kind of crazy.
Oh, it is crazy indeed. And you know, Andrew, my heart goes out to you. I know you wanted to vote, but again, it is what I see as a continuation of unnecessary punishment, basically against people who have a differing ideology from the Trudeau Liberal government. And like I said, we met an individual who had his phone wiretapped. We've seen people arrested for bylaw violations. We've seen the vilification and demonization. We've seen the freezing and the threat of freezing Canadians' bank accounts. And now this, a law-abiding citizen, until proven guilty, that is, has his vote stripped of him, whereas, like I said, the worst of the worst, they're allowed to vote. It's mind-boggling the amount of punishment people associated with the Freedom Convoy have endured. Last word goes to you, Andrew.
I just want to say, I don't identify as a protester. That was my neighborhood, and I wanted to see what was going on in my neighborhood. And oftentimes we see that, you know, the mainstream media won't show what's really going on. And I figured it was my duty to serve my community, to go down there and see what was going on. And when you're down there, you know, like anybody was being gathered up by the police, like people just from the neighborhood that want to see what's going on in their own backyard. People coming out of Tim Hortons, people coming out of Burger King. I mean, this was unbelievable the way they treated Canadians. And what people need to understand is they were acting on certain things that didn't exist yet until 24 hours later. So
Yeah, no, we were there, of course, Andrew, and we didn't like the way the demonstration was disassembled, if you will. It was another dark day when it came to peaceful protests in this country. I'll tell you what, my friend, after you have your day in court, please reach out to us and tell us how it went. And then I guess hopefully by the time the municipal elections roll around, which will be in the fall, you can get some kind of exemption, because I don't think it's fair to deny someone like you the right to vote. Yet, as I said, we'll go to the worst of the worst in maximum security prisons and make sure they get their right to vote. The world is upside down, my friend. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You got it. Want to find out the scale and scope of this wiretapping operation. And we want to know who exactly was wiretapped. Former cops, political adversaries, military personnel. We have an anonymous intake form at the same website, and that is stopthewiretapping.com, where you can submit your information, and we promise you, you will remain anonymous. We want to know how many innocent people were subjected to CCP-style surveillance for their politics. We want to know who you are so that if the government comes after you again, we can help.